gone home and studied the scriptures and established the biblical facts of Yeshua's final Pesach Seder, right?
Yes. Yep.
And we've all studied the timeline of his death and resurrection, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good. And you still have questions, right? Not surprising. This is a pretty big mythical religious bubble to burst. And we have to peel back thousands and thousands of years of varnish, of man-made tradition. And people will say to us, get real? Who do you think you are? Studying the word for yourselves? It's interesting, I picked up on that again when it says, we're frightened, we don't want to hear him. You go up and talk to him, and then you come back and tell us what he said. That's exactly what they're doing on a weekly basis. They say, oh no, we couldn't possibly go there. You go, find out what he's got to say, you come back and tell us. Not the way it's meant to be. Then explaining it through Jewish culture, explanations and translations. Well, here's the biggie. Even if Yeshua had died on Yom Shishi, or a Friday evening, then as prophesied 3 days and nights, the sign of Yonah would still have seen him rise on Monday. So even if you went by their thing, that would have caused him to rise on Monday. It still wouldn't get him to rising on Sunday. Yom Shani, between dusk and sundown. And the women who came to the tomb, even ignoring the misunderstood Shabbat issues, which we all know about, they thought it was just Shabbat, not a celebration Shabbat, a festival Shabbat. That's why they get confused and think it had to be a Friday. They would have had to visit the tomb on Yom Shlishi or Tuesday morning. So the more they try, the harder it gets for them. So no matter which way they spin it, the timing simply doesn't work. It doesn't line up with the word. And if it doesn't line up with the word, it's a lie. We've got to start calling what it is, what it is. And if it's not the truth, then it's a lie. There are no half-truths or half-lies. It's either true or it's not. And if it's not, it's a lie. So week in, week out, people are being taught lies. Now we get back to reality according to Torah. If you want to get back to reality, read Torah. And as we read in Yochanan 12, it says, 6 days before Pesach, or in other words, on Nisan 8, which that year was a Tuesday. And people say, how do you know? Because through the rabbinical records, I can pinpoint any date before or after his birth. And they can tell you what days things occurred. It's possible to go back and trace them. So on that year, 6 days before Pesach, was Nisan 8, and it was a Tuesday. So on that Tuesday evening, Yeshua had a special dinner at the house of Elazar, the man he'd raised from the dead. And again, he wasn't just doing that because he fancied having dinner with the guy. He was doing it again as a prophecy. He was showing people and saying, look, this guy was dead, but he rose again. If people were listening, they would have understood what he was saying. That he was going to go and do exactly the same thing. So who anointed him with half a bottle of pure oil of spikenard worth a whole year's wages? Miriam. The one that everybody else had rejected. The one that everybody else turned around and said, oh, don't have to do with her.
So was it the same Miriam, Lazarus' sister?
Yes.
And she was
the one that has all the problems. She was the prostitute. That's how he got to know the family.
I was going to ask you too, because I read that not so long ago, and I was thinking now, is this the same Mary or the same Mary?
Yeah. So who was it that gave him honour and understood that he said, she understands the best thing to do. Don't worry about Martha. Martha was the one with the problem.
Yeah.
I guarantee she was looking down on her sister and saying, who does she think she is?
So she anointed her twice then, once with his feet and with her hair. So she...
No, she wasn't the one that did it with her hair. That was somebody else. I suspect, but again, this is just my theory. You remember the woman that they were going to stone?
Yeah.
I suspect it was her.
Oh.
But that's just
Yeah.
just a discernment in my spirit. But I'm not going to say thus so. But no, this was Miriam, and he'd always said, "Who's going to be the most grateful? The one that's been forgiven the most."
Was that the one that he cast the 7 demons out of? Miriam, one of the Miriams.
One of the Miriams.
Cast the 7 demons
As well.
out of.
Yeah.
And where's Magdalene?
Hmm?
Is Magdalene the same as
Magdalene.
the
Yeah.
Lazarus lived?
Yes. Exactly.
I find it interesting that Eleazar was in the tomb for 4 days.
Yes. But it's interesting that stepping in on behalf of the Father, he said, "Come forth." He called him out of the tomb, just as the Father called him out of the tomb. Nobody else had the authority. He didn't just sort of stumble out with bandages falling everywhere.
That doesn't do it. No, it's just she's not Mary Magdalene.
No. So again, yeah, it's very difficult sometimes because there are so many with the same name, so it's hard to pinpoint it. So all you can do in a situation like this is just pray for discernment.
Yeah.
Just ask Abbott, see what he says.
Joshua, that's worth a whole year's wages.
Yep, that was worth a whole year's wages. So you can see why Yehuda got, Shimon got upset. That should have been going into his purse, so he could skim off his take. And at the same time, the religious authorities, and again you've got to understand that religious authorities were not Judaic, they weren't Kohen, they were appointed by Herod. These were religious authorities, they were not God's Kohen, his priests that he'd anointed. And at the same time, the religious authorities decided to get rid of both of them. Why? Because they couldn't argue with it. Everybody'd seen this guy die. Everybody'd seen him resurrected again. They had to get rid of him. Why?
Yeah.
Because people were leaving them in droves.
Yeah.
And this is what happens. I remember talking to a pastor years ago, and he was so upset. And I said, "Well," he said, "there's a whole family left." I said, "Oh, that's a shame. Were you really close to them?" He said, "No, but they were the biggest tithers in the church." That was why he was upset. Why? Because Eleazar's resurrection caused large numbers of people to stop following the religious leaders and follow Yeshua. And they couldn't have that, could they? They couldn't possibly have people finding out the truth and not being under their control or paying their temple taxes and their tithes. And as I say today, nothing much has changed as we experience a similar backlash for all the same reasons from today's religious leaders. Why are they bothered if people come to us? Because they'll learn the truth, and when they learn the truth, they will be exposed. They will lose control, and that's the thing they fear most. So then as we move along to the next day, Yom Reve'i, or Lulav Wednesday as I call it, not Palm Sunday, it was Lulav Wednesday, or Palm Wednesday. People heard that he was coming to Jerusalem for Pesach. And they took palm branches signifying the future Sukkot return. And they went out to meet him. Not only did they do that to signify the future return, but they actually uttered the words that he said, "Until I hear these words, I will not return. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." And they said it to him on that day. As they went out to meet him, and they acknowledged him as king. They actually acknowledged him as king. So somebody had been reading the Torah. It never wasn't the religious authorities. And they went out to meet him and made a remarkable statement as they greeted him. Baruch haba Hashem Adonai. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And they acknowledged him as the king of Israel, which in actual fact he was. He was the physical king of Israel in line of succession through his family. He came from the house of David. That's why, when he was born, they went back there for the census, to the town of David, because he came from that area. And through his family, he was the legitimate heir to the throne. You remember that Yahweh says, you will never lack a person to sit on your throne, to David. And he meant it. And the good thing now is because Yeshua is sitting on that throne, it's eternal. They'll never lack for somebody to sit on the throne. He is the spiritual king of Israel, and he's also the physical king of Israel. And as a condition for his return, Yeshua said that they'd have to repeat that sentence and actually mean it this time. Some of them probably meant it, some of them probably didn't. A lot of them would probably just said the same thing everybody next to them said, because they thought that's what they're supposed to do. In Matthew 23:39, study it. In other words, this was prophecy. This was a dress rehearsal for the real thing when he returns at Sukkot. And this time when he comes back, he will not be on a donkey. This time he will be on a white horse. He will come as king. And you can read about that in Revelation 7:9-17. Beloved, we have to have avahat ha'emet, or a love of the truth. Because anything short of complete truth will never give us complete, real freedom. You want freedom? The only way you can get freedom is through the truth. And it has to be absolute 100% truth. 99% is not the truth. 99% is a lie. 100% is the truth. And the enemy loves to mix a tiny bit of truth in with a lie. It's like a spoonful of sugar to help the medicine go down. It's like you don't taste the bitterness of all the rest of it. All you get is the sugar hit. And because of that, you swallow the whole thing. And that's what people are doing today. They turn and say, oh, but that bit's in the Bible. And you turn and say, yeah, but the other 95% isn't. The alternative to the truth is bondage or slavery to a lie. And that's why he says, I've come to set you free from slavery and the slavery mentality, where the whole thrust of the slave mentality is survival. I don't want to survive, I want to live. I want to live life abundantly. Right now, the shofar is sounding for those who have an ear to hear, as Yahweh shows us the real condition of his body today. Not just the happy, clappy, sentimental, nice version, but the valley of dry bones that he's bringing together. I mean, it's going to be really popular if you go and visit a few places and turn and say, you're just a bag of dry bones. But they are. I can go in there and I can talk to them, I can hear the rattling. He wants to cause them to rise up, come together. Just like Israel. That prophecy is about Israel, but it's also relevant to his body today. The real body needs to stand up and stop clunking away. And like I say, his body looks more like a butcher's shop at the moment. Just little pieces everywhere. Need to come together. And there's a Jewish half and the other half. Unless the Jewish half's there, then it won't be kosher. And he won't come back for a body that's not kosher. So what's his question to us today? Can these bones live? How many people think these bones can live?
Yes.
If you don't, then you need to pray and talk to them. He is bringing the dry bones together. Just like Israel. Can these bones live? And his answer to us is, prophesy restoration to them. Prophesy to the bones. Prophesy to the dryness. Prophesy to the dead sticks, because that's what they look like. They are not dead, they're just dormant. And when he breathes on them, they will come to life.
It's like it's the sea. It's not going to be a dead sea.
They've recovered seeds from the pyramids. from 3,000 years ago. And they're just dead seeds, they're just little black things. But they put them in a laboratory, and they humidify them, and they plant them, and they put water in them, and suddenly they have spelt. Suddenly they have seeds. It wasn't dead. It was just dormant. That's what a seed is, it's dormant. That's what he says in there. They're not dead. They're just asleep. They're not dead people there that belong to him. They're just dormant.
Yeah.
All they're waiting for is to come and water them. And he gave a demonstration at Pesach when he went. Bang! Suddenly. All these dead people that they hadn't seen for years suddenly came up and started walking through the streets. See, when he went to Elazar, that was just a prophecy of what he was about to do. A week later, hundreds and hundreds of all these dead people came through the streets, and they were just a promise of what he's going to do in the end days. That was just a rehearsal. He says, prophesy restoration to them and tell them, I will make breath enter into you. He has to breathe the life into their nostrils. Nobody else can do it.
Yeah.
But we have to prophesy to them.
Yeah.
And part of that prophecy is to say, come forth and you will live. And he says, tell them that I'll attach ligaments to them. I'll make flesh grow on them. I'll cover them with skin. And then I will breathe my ruach into their nostrils. When they were all gathered together in one place after he'd gone, what was the sound that came into the room? The sound of a mighty wind. The wind came rushing in. He was breathing into their nostrils. He was breathing his ruach into their nostrils. After that, they were different people. They weren't these frightened little rabbits that had gone and hidden and denied him 3 times. Suddenly, they were ready to take on the whole Roman Empire. And you will live and you will know that I am Yahweh, who was, who is, and who will be for eternity. And that's what Yahweh means. And that's why he says, when they ask, what is my name? You tell them, Yahweh, which means I was, I am, and I will be. These names aren't just names, they mean something. Yeshua means my redemption. And the result will be, they stood up on their feet, a huge army. The shofar is blowing today already. Can't you hear it? Yahweh is restoring his real body here on earth. And he's exposing all the wannabes, the usurpers and the pretenders who say, we've done this in your name and we've done that in your name. And I've built a crystal cathedral in your name and I've done everything and I've been and fed the poor and I've gone to take care of the orphans. And he's saying, go away, I don't know you. They've mistaken works for relationship. He doesn't want people who do things for him, he wants people who does things with him. He wants relationship. Wouldn't it be sad after you sacrificed yourself all those years and doing all these things and gone to India for 40 years? And they stand before him and he says, who are you? Do I know you? We're the saddest thing in the world. And he's saying to them, who are you? I don't know you. You have no relationship with me. You say you love me, but your actions prove otherwise. Your fruit tells me who you really are and who you're really serving. And he's saying to them, you know about me, but you don't know me. A lot of people know about him, but they don't know him. And there's a big difference. You can read this and you can know all about him. You can memorize it. You can be able to recite it off pat. But unless you know him, you're wasting your time. don't know me intimately, lovingly, trustingly. Abba is calling from deep to deep, calling to his enslaved, wounded children to come together and to turn towards home. And again, we all know the story of the prodigal. We've all been prodigals. We all know prodigals. That's what it's all about. Make no mistake, he knows you intimately. Even if you only know about him and you don't know him, he knows you. He knows you intimately. He knows who you are, he knows where you've been, and he knows where you've come from. How? Because he formed you in your mother's womb. He's counted every hair on your head. And I'm very pleased about that because I'm losing a lot of mine. I want him back when I see him. He knitted your DNA together. You can just picture him up in heaven. Click, 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 another one. Click, 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 another one. He knitted your DNA together. You tell me anybody else is capable of doing that? The scientists are only nibbling at the edges of DNA. They don't understand even a fraction of it. And they certainly can't produce it. They can copy it, but they can't produce it. Why? Because only Yahweh can produce it. Only he can give life. He's a loving Abba. He's a loving father, a loving parent who cares deeply about you. And don't base your view of him on earthly fathers that you've had or other people that you've known that have treated you like a doormat. That's not what a loving father does. A loving father loves you unconditionally, no matter who you are, what you've done, or where you've been. I've said so many times before, I may not like my children's behaviour, but I love them. That will never change. They can be an axe-murderer, and I will still love them. But I don't have to like some of the things they do. But to correct that and to help them, it has to come from that love. I'm not there to judge them. I'm not there to condemn them. That's not my role. He's a parent who cares deeply about you. Can't you hear him calling you from deep to deep? Because it's not physical with him. It's spirit to spirit. And unless your spirit has been restored, you can't hear what he's saying. And if you do hear him, will you respond? And if you don't do it now, then when? And if not here, where? And if not you, then who will? It's your free will choice. Today, if you're hurt and angry with him, don't harden your heart. So many people have hardened their heart to punish the people that have hurt them and don't realise that who they're really hurting is themselves. When you do that, you're still letting that person control your life. Don't let them do it anymore. Forgive them. Because when you forgive them, the person that's set free is you. It doesn't punish him or anybody else. Just because you're angry with them, it doesn't punish him. It doesn't punish anybody else. It only damages you. You damage yourself if you hold on to unforgiveness. And the answer is to talk to him. Forgive him. Forgive yourself. Most people have the biggest problem forgiving themselves, even though they weren't actually responsible for the problem. Forgive him and others, including yourself, and be finally free of these heavy burdens that are weighing your life down. You say life's too tough. Life's too tough because you're trying to carry a burden you should never have carried. You're trying to carry a burden that's not yours. Put it down. Give it to him. Let him lift them from you and give you rest. You say, I'm too weak to give it, then fine. Just come to him and say, please take them. Take them away. You can walk out of here completely free because the truth will set you free. And the truth is you have a choice. You don't have to stay in prison. You don't have to stay a slave. Experience tells us that if we walk in the light, we can see where we're going. Rocket science, huh? Really deep statements I like to make. But if you walk in the dark, you can't. It's so simple. If you walk in the light, you'll see where you're going. If you walk in the dark, you'll keep bumping into things and injuring yourself. I remember when I was very young, I thought it was a good idea to go running around after my friends with a big cardboard box over my head. What I didn't realise is that there was a big corner of a house right in front of me. Bang, I hit it. And I stood there and I was thinking, I'm sweating. It wasn't, it was blood. I didn't just hit the bricks on the house, I had to hit the corner of it, the sharp edged corner of it. And it just literally hit me right there. And I've still got the scar. If we walk around in the dark, we've got problems.
Yeah. You aware of the time, Jim? Seems like.
That's okay. Still got a few minutes. So stop stumbling around in the darkness. Only people who've got something to hide like the darkness. You ever noticed that? If you've got nothing to hide, you enjoy being in the light. If you've got something to hide, you like the darkness. That's why nighttime has a lot more going on than daytime. What they forget is, he has X-ray vision, he has night vision. He can see just as easily in the day as the nighttime as he can in the daytime.
Doesn't he say he walks at night?
By trying to understand with the mind only, through logic, you will go round and round and round in circles, and you'll form false conclusions. You'll be continually, randomly bumping into things, and every time you bump into something, you think you found the answer. You haven't found the answer, you just bumped into something, because you're walking around in the dark. This method is otherwise known as humanism or philosophy. So stop falling over stumbling blocks and cliffs and getting hopelessly lost. Trying to understand reality in these circumstances is like me showing you a beautiful piece of artwork in a pitch black room. I take you into this pitch black room and there's this wonderful painting there. And I say, isn't it wonderful? Isn't it beautiful? And you think, I can't see a thing. This is pitch black. But not only that, I put a blindfold on you and earplugs. And I play a pre-taped message from the artist himself and then expect afterwards you to describe the picture to me. Its intricacies of form, its subtle shades and colours, and the meaning behind the message that the artist is trying to convey. And I ask you, most importantly, what does it mean to you personally? And you say, it doesn't mean anything to me. I've looked at this beautiful painting and I can't see a thing. It's because you've done it in the dark with a blindfold on. The wall is full of people that are continually bumping into things in the dark and then describing how they feel. So many people live their life based on feelings. Even though the part they bump into is only one aspect of it. And they bumped into it by mistake anyway. So they feel this leg or the trunk of an elephant, and they try and describe an elephant based on feeling one leg. I don't think many people would recognise it based on that description. Well, it's this round thing and it's leathery. It doesn't help you to understand its dimensions, its form, its colour or its function. And it certainly doesn't give you a picture of its feelings or its relationships or what its home looks like and feels like and smells like. To some, reading the long list of genealogy in the Tanakh leaves them cold and bored. And they say, don't bother reading that, who we get who. I love reading those parts. It's a family album. For me, these are my ancestors. These are my people. This is my people's history. These are my people's love letters. It also tells you what a bunch of ratbags they were at the time, but it doesn't stop me loving them. It makes me actually feel close to them, because they made mistakes too. They weren't perfect. I hate perfect people, because usually they're not. They just put on this pretense. They encourage me as I read of Abba's love, faithfulness and trustworthiness, in spite of their behaviour. Down through the generations, my generations, and as he fulfills every promise he makes to them. And he makes his promises through ordinary people caught up in extraordinary circumstances. And every single one of you here today are ordinary people, but you're going to do extraordinary things through him. Accept that today. It's going to happen. To some people, the past is irrelevant. Yet without it and its lessons, there is no future, but merely an endless cycle of repetitive disasters. Without a foundation, no building will stand. You cannot read Yahweh's word with your physical mind and human reasoning. You will never discover the immense wealth contained within it. You have to read it through the eyes of your spirit and hear it through the ears of your spirit to see and hear what he's saying to his body. If you look at somebody from the outside, you just see what you see. People look at that and they see what they see. But you put it under X-ray. You put a human being under an X-ray. You discover whole new dimensions you've never discovered before. And then you put those parts that you see under a microscope, and you're never ever going to get to the bottom of it. There's always going to be something more that you will find, something more that you will see. And that's what this is like. I read it day in, day out, year in, year out, and I come to a part that I think I know really well, and he shows me something new. And he shows me something deeper. And I think, wow, I never saw that before. It's like a treasure chest. You have to go deeper to find the really good stuff. You cannot read Yahweh's word with your physical minds and human reasoning and discover the immense wealth contained within it. You have to read through the eyes of your spirit and hear through the ears of your spirit to see and hear what he's saying to his body. Torah is a bottomless, inexhaustible treasure trove packed with precious nuggets and jewels. And the deeper you go into it as he leads you, the more breathtaking it becomes. You cannot listen and discern whatever is saying to you with your physical ears. You need to listen with your spirit. You need to understand with your spirit. And you need to communicate with him through your spirit. That is why we pray, Ruach HaKodesh, Holy Spirit, Spirit of truth, please give us an ear to hear. And people turn and say, but I've got ears. That's not what he's saying. He said if you want to understand what he's been saying, you have to ask him to restore your spiritual ears, to tune them into the right frequency. To hear and understand what Yahweh is actually saying to his body. And he doesn't say it by might or by power, but by his spirit. And that's why you have to listen carefully to the soft and gentle, not small, the soft and gentle, peaceful, firm voice of a father to his children. Of course, some will say, but I don't hear him. Lots of people don't say, I don't hear him. Well, I'm not really sure if I do hear that it's him. First and foremost, are you tuned into the right channel? Or are you on some Rock FM station? Or are you only getting static? Secondly, relationship is the key. The more time you spend talking with him and listening, the more you will trust him. No different than any human being to any other human being. The more time you spend with them will mean you either trust them more or trust them less. But I can guarantee you that the more time you spend with him, the more you will trust him. And the more you'll recognize his voice. And I've talked about it before. My wife could be in the middle of a crowded supermarket, and if she hears a child's voice, she knows it's hers. It could be right across it. There could be hundreds and hundreds of kids in there. But the minute that voice, boom, she knows it's one of hers and she's there. You can pick up a phone call and it could be static. It could be from halfway around the world. And you get this crackly little voice on the other end, but immediately she knows it's one of her kids. Abba knows when it's him, when it's you. And when you get to know him, even if everything's crowding in around him, you'll think, that's Abba's voice. You'll know, and he'll know you. It comes with relationship. It comes with that bonding. And you have to deliberately focus and tune out the surrounding distractions. Thirdly, as we come together as a kehillah, as a family, as members of the same body, we share together and we get confirmations together from him and encourage one another as we confirm what we've heard from each other. We confirm to each other that we're hearing accurately. And I've said before about people who are prophesying. Listen to a prophet that you know and you can trust. And suddenly, before he even speaks, you'll hear something or you'll read something that morning. And then somebody will just speak a word and you'll think, I only read that this morning. I only just heard that. I must be hearing from him. It encourages you. We need to encourage one another. That's why it says only a prophet can assess what another prophet says. Because as a prophet, you have that discernment and you hear from him what it is he's saying, and you know whether that person is actually saying what he's supposed to be saying. Somebody else can't turn around and say, I don't believe that prophecy. How did you know? You've got no discernment. You're not listening to others. Only another prophet cannot judge what they say, but help shape them and encourage them and say, well, the first part of that prophecy was wonderful, but then you drifted off. You went into your own strength after that. And it happens, particularly when we first start. As I said before, this guy gave this wonderful prophecy years ago, and at the end of it all, he didn't know how to finish it off. Because he'd heard other people saying, thus saith the Lord. You know, the one that means it must be real. No. Anyway, he didn't know how to finish it off, and in the end he turned and said, and a Merry Christmas to you all. It just came out of nowhere because he just didn't know how to finish off the prophecy. But you don't judge him for that. You sort of think, poor guy, he's learning. I imagine if he listened to it afterwards, he would have thought, oh no, what am I thinking? That was in a church, so it was okay. We need to encourage one another. So like I've said before, courage is something that we either give someone or take from them. We either encourage them or we discourage them. We need to encourage one another. As I've said many times, prophecy is a process of confirmation, not revelation. If you haven't heard it first, it's not prophecy. If somebody's prophesying over your life, it should be a confirmation of what he's already said to you, not a revelation of something you've never heard. That's what it's meant to be. And it should be facts from Abba, not vague feelings from some mysterious source or other. Oh, he spoke to me out of this cloud. I had a feeling, just intuition. No. If he says something, he says it, and it's accurate and it's truthful. And it's usually based on the word. It doesn't differ from the word. It doesn't contradict anything that are his principles. Feelings are not facts. You cannot rely on them. Oh, but I feel this. So what? It doesn't make it true. It's just how you feel, how you interacted with that situation. Feelings are not facts. Does it mean you can't have feelings? Of course you have feelings, but you can't live your life by them. But I've got this gut feeling. That's called lunchtime. I get gut feelings every day at midday. You can't steer your life by them. If you do, you will crash on a regular basis. If you live your life on feelings, you will constantly keep crashing and thinking, why is this happening to me all the time? Why is it happening again? Because you're basing your life on feelings, and every time you do that, you're going to crash. Because you're turning around to the person who's supposed to be steering your life and saying, it's okay, I've got it. And not only that, you're doing it without traffic lights, you're doing it in the dark, and you're doing it with a blindfold on. That's what living your life by feelings is about. That's what it's like. You will be double-minded and unstable in all of your ways. Basing your life on feelings is what double-minded means. It means you're always between two opinions. Check your steering. Would it be sensible for you to have a car and not check the steering on a regular basis? If you did, what would you expect to happen? You would crash. If it isn't maintained and serviced by Yahweh, you will fail your wolf, which in this case means warrant of faith. So if you want to pass your warrant of faith, you need to let him check your steering and everything else. Otherwise you'll be unsafe and unroadworthy. Yes, we're like a small child. Everybody knows the story about the emperor with no clothes? We are like the small child who dares to refuse to follow the PC, trendy, sycophantic rules and speak the truth by saying the emperor has no clothes on. As we look at this world's man-made religions and evolutionary crackpot theories that even their author, Charles Darwin, refuted before he died. People talk about evolution and stuff like that. Even Charles Darwin himself recanted and repented on his deathbed for writing the book. He refuted all of his theories on his deathbed. You won't hear that.
I think the biggest problem with that is everyone considers it as science when it's not in fact. Yeah. It's actually a belief.
But that was one of the things he refuted and said it's not science, it's humanism.
It's religion.
It is
The so-called leaders or emperors of this dying world are naked and miserable and don't even realise it. Because they're so busy being famous and fabulous that they are being conned, along with those who serve them, into parading past us and expecting us to tell them what they want to hear. That only special people can see these spiritual clothes. They think that they're so big and strong and powerful and entrenched that no one will ever challenge them or challenge their puffed up propaganda. The Romans thought that, the Greeks thought that, the Ottoman Empire thought that, and so did the British Empire. And all the other puffed up little empires that we've seen over the centuries. Where are they now? They've all disappeared from the landscape. And who's doing it now? America's trying to take up the role, in opposition to a new batch of wannabes, otherwise known as global terrorism. But the reality is that we aren't wrestling against flesh and blood. We're wrestling against principalities and rules in the heavenly places. And that's where the real conflict is being fought. They are the real source of the propaganda and the lies that we hear. They are the ones responsible for this global terrorism. Just as Abba is responsible for redemption and shalom. So it's time for his body, for the body, his body, to rise up and take its rightful place in this kingdom. Yeshua is preparing his bride. And you need to understand that the religious establishment is on notice. They either bow the knee to his plans and purposes or suffer the consequences. They either listen to what David is saying to them, or he'll smack him between the eyes with a stone. Yahweh is the one and only King of Kings. He is the Elohim of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. He is the Elohim of Israel. He is the creator and ruler of the whole universe, not just the earth, the whole universe. I don't care how many other planets they find that look like Earth, that there could be life on. Not my problem. He is the creator and ruler of the universe. All others are irrelevant fakes and pretenders. But what about all the world's controlling entities and self-important religious hierarchies? Well, there is a place for them. It's called outer darkness. Because to Yahweh, they're just merely specks of dust that he'll just blow away. So shalom, gam Yeshua Musa, Lafanim, gam Avur, Kol-Zeh Elizor Gamur. And Yeshua declared once and for all, it is finished. So shalom, Padu Echad, or redeemed ones. Shalom.